Artlist.io.
Yeah, I'm overzealous when I'm thinking about the cash flow. I never had no handouts, just came natural. I've been tested so much, all these restless nights, all these different situations that I've been through. I seen pain trying to creep in through the window, but now it's like,
oh my lord, is it a warm day or what? Right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, oh, let's not put that there. Welcome back to yet another one. This weekend is going to be some more modifications for the Civic. I've got my new throttle body and manifold to go on because next weekend is the dyno, which is going to be another video to come. Well, this weekend I've got manifold, throttle body and a load of other bits to do to the car just to check it over and make sure that everything's still happy. Which also means that I've got to go home, so I've now got what Maps is telling me a 4.5 hour journey to do 190 miles. Absolutely shambolic. And I also need to get fuel because the old fuel gauge is a bit empty. That's going to be what's on the agenda first, and then I can get cracking on home, get some work done to the Civic. And with that, we are now full tanked and ready to go. Every time that I come home, on my journey back on the A3, if any of you lot are from like the south coast area, you will know that there's the A3 Hindhead Tunnel. I don't even know if I'm in frame, but I've got to see if I can get a sound clip because the car in this tunnel sounds insane. Here we go. This brings is unreal. That is ridiculous. Oh my days. They are so good. You might also have been able to tell in that when I was accelerating or downshifting, there was a little bit of a breakup, which I'm pretty certain is related to the throttle position sensor, which I had to change out this week because I had one that had failed, and I don't think I've quite got it set up right, so I'm pretty certain that that is what that problem is. So I need to plug into the ECU and calibrate everything. But I just had to show you. I really hope that's picked up on camera, but I had to show you how good that is. Anyway, the rest of the journey is pretty boring now. I've got to sit on the M25, so I'll pick up tomorrow morning when we start the work on the Civic. And with that, we were able to start stripping down the Civic to change over the manifold, and what we thought was going to be a pretty straightforward process. Now, first things first, we took off things like the intake pipe and the fuel rail so we could get better access to things like the manifold bolts and throttle body. By working through and unplugging the injectors and undoing any earth cables, we were then able to pull the fuel rail off and take the injectors out. Now, working through and disconnecting things like the throttle cable, we were able to get to the manifold bolts and undo the 4 12mm bolts that hold the throttle body onto the manifold. Now, because on the bottom of the throttle body we have an idle air control valve that's got a coolant supply, we needed to clamp off the lines to make sure that we weren't going to leak any coolant or let too much air into the system, and then the throttle body could be pulled off out the way, and we put it on a bench so I could transfer all the sensors and everything that was bolted onto the old throttle body over to the new one. Now building up the new throttle body, we can move over the idler control valve and this top coolant port, and also putting a bit of PTFE on it just to stop it leaking. When working through stuff like this, make sure that all your seals are clean. We reused the old one because this had been put on brand new only a couple of months ago when we'd rebuilt the engine anyway. So making sure that's clean and putting the idler control valve on, we can bolt everything down and make sure it's tight. The next bit I decided to move over was the mass airflow sensor, which bolts straight on the top of the throttle body with one bolt like this, and then I could move on to changing over the throttle position sensor as well. Now if you're doing this at home, remember a throttle position sensor isn't one you can just bang on and be finished. You have to calibrate it when it's all fitted to the car. Sometimes you can do it using a multimeter. This time I use it using an ECU, which you'll see later on in the video, but once I was doing this, my dad was fitting the new manifold to the car and dropping the injectors in. Now what you'll see is that we were putting the injectors into the manifold before and then planning to put the fuel rail on after. But when we got to putting the fuel rail on, we realised it was going to be a lot easier to put the injectors into the rail first and then into the manifold after. This was basically just to try and make sure that we weren't going to nick any of the seals and create a fuel leak. Now once the fuel rail was back on the car and bolted down, we could move on to adding the adapter plate for the new throttle body to fit this manifold. Now the adapter plate is a universal one that can fit several different manifolds, so it took us a minute to find out which holes we need to use and what orientation the throttle body was to sit in. And after giving you lot a great view of the back of my head, we managed to get the throttle body all mounted up and bolted to the manifold. We did, however, need to extend the wires for the idle air control valve, as well as bending the brake booster vacuum fitting that was in the top of the manifold so we had clearance on the bonnet. Once this is all back together, as a gentle test, we were able to drop the bonnet shut and we proceeded to lift it up on the ramp to use a mirror and make sure that the fitting was actually clearing the bonnet itself. As far as the TPS calibration was concerned, you can see the values on the screen here. I was able to data log the ECU, and on the TPS value you can see it increasing and decreasing. So when I was touching the throttle, I needed to make sure that it was responding as perfectly as possible, and then we could tighten it down and be all set to go. Just check on the error codes. Yeah, nothing. Sensors. And just could look at that and just make sure everything's happy, but so far, so good. Voila. All sorted. So we've pretty much finished up. We had a load of little jobs to be doing today as well, but the main ones was obviously putting the manifold on, as well as a new throttle body. There were a few things that this throttle body doesn't use that the old one does, which you have to work around, and it's been a bit of a farce getting everything on because where we plug stuff in, the plugs don't clear, and then a couple of bits broke. The throttle cable was too short. So it was a big old farce getting it sorted, but we've got everything bolted on. We've also ended up putting a new clutch master cylinder on and a few different little maintenance bits. New manifold and everything is sorted, and we now, hopefully, I've just taken it up the road, and obviously currently as it sits isn't mapped for this manifold, but it still drives and everything is perfectly fine. So I'll take a very steady journey over to the dyno on Saturday. I've got to go down to Swansea, so I'm going to JCal down in Swansea, and yeah, fingers crossed, everything should be okay. But that is going to pretty much wrap it up for this one. I'm excited to see what power it makes. Let me know what you think it is going to make, and yeah, we will reconvene next weekend for the dyno, and then possibly some mountain passes in Wales. We'll see in a bit.